Hi, I'm Debbie Georgatos. Welcome to my show, America, Can We Talk? Today, 3 days before Easter, I want to talk with you about three things. Number one, this conversation about the Dallas DA decriminalizing poverty, and does it really mean decriminalizing crime? Some developments on that. Number two, Democrats are trying to trump Attorney General Barr's Mueller report announcement. Lots to understand about that. And number three, Notre Dame, Christianity, Passover, and Easter. Stay tuned.
I am America, one voice, united we stand.
Debbie Georgatos, host of America Can We Talk, is an author, attorney, and political analyst whose mission is to inspire the American political conversation about preserving liberty in the best country on earth. America Can We Talk is sponsored by GC Works, a Dallas-based company performing advanced technology research in the oil and gas industry.
Hi, welcome again to America Can We Talk. I'm Debbie Georgatos. This is my last show from California. We've been out here for 2 weeks visiting family. Really can't wait to get back to the RNCN network studios. Cannot wait to be, because this is kind of, from the trenches here in California. Well, I want to start today talking about the, we talked a couple of days ago, I think, about the story in Dallas, Texas, where I'm from, where the show usually is from, about the Dallas District Attorney, John Creuzot, announcing he is not going to prosecute cases involving the theft of less than $750 worth of items. A little clarification, it doesn't count. His carve out from the theft law apparently doesn't count if someone steals money, like, robs you of your wallet. But the theft of things is what he's talking about, and saying basically he's trying to put in place a law that says, well, if we have if you steal things that are worth less than $750, and he tried to fold in and they were for necessity, not for profit, meaning you really needed those shoes or whatever it is that you stole, that somehow that will be acceptable. And the reason I really want to talk about that, there's been a lot of conversation about it since then. I did a little bit of research relating to this idea of the criminalization of poverty. You will start to hear this term more and more. In fact, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez popped up with a criminalization of poverty type slogan, a tweet she put out recently, and in other conversations around this country, there's this idea that somehow America has criminalized poverty. First, I want to show you Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's tweet. She put up, our country has a justice system that criminalizes poverty, disproportionately targets race, yet routinely pardons large-scale crimes of wealth and privilege. Moments like these tell us it's less a justice system and more a class enforcement system. The specific thing she's talking about is that the one of the people, the very wealthy Hollywood types who got caught up in the college bribery scandal, where they were buying their kids' way into admission in college, was basically told she's likely to get a very short sentence. And she pled guilty. And I don't even want to go off on today because we've talked about that before. But what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is talking about is the idea that she thought this woman should have gotten more of a penalty, more time in jail for what she did, which is essentially using money, buying her, she and other wealthy Americans, buying their children's way into exclusive universities through flat out fraud. Obviously, you have to prosecute that. I don't know what other similar cases involve, so I don't know if that penalty that's being discussed for her is right or wrong. But I do want to get at this notion of criminalizing poverty. Number one, more and more of the left-wing America sources are using this expression, criminalizing poverty. It is an intentionally misleading slogan, an intentionally misleading way to argue the case. And actually, it ends up being very, very negative in a commentary about America. But let me just tell you a good side of that kind of thinking. What the DA in Dallas County did, and I'm sure he's trying to start a trend. I'm sure other municipalities, other counties will be talking about similar ideas, is the idea, if you really stole only because you needed something, we shouldn't treat you like a criminal. And I will tell you why that is so wrong. And we talked about the other day too, but to be very clear, we have many other avenues in our justice system to feed in corrections, a kind of community justice idea that, this was your first offense, or you were really needy, or you were under duress, or all sorts of reasons where you can present a defense and in various steps along the way in the criminal justice system, receive a modified, perhaps no penalty at all. But when you start to announce that we simply aren't going to prosecute at all, you're obviously going to A, encourage criminals, encourage thieves. B, you're going to drive businesses out of low income areas, because businesses are not going to stay in areas where when their stores are robbed, when people steal from them, nothing happens. So the communities around them will be encouraged to continue robbing those stores. Those stores aren't going to stay there. They're going to move away. This stunt by the Dallas DA, claiming he's decriminalizing poverty by not prosecuting people who steal less than $750, what he's really saying is, I don't care about poor people at all. I don't mind hurting the communities of poor people because I'm going to make their lives worse because businesses leave. But there was something, as I was researching this, I realized it's a trendy expression now, decriminalizing poverty. And to be clear, poverty was never a crime. It is not a crime. It has not been a crime. But there have been some good efforts recently in the United States of America, and those are really getting at the idea that maybe some laws are either too harsh in terms of their penalties, or the way we have our system set up in our various cities and counties around the country, we attach fines or penalties, and those fines or penalties fall unduly harshly on low-income Americans. And I actually discovered that one of my law school professors, I went to Georgetown Law School, and one of my law school professors, who's a huge liberal, but Peter Edelman, is a law school professor at Georgetown. I can't remember I had him for some course anyway in law school, but he is on a mission. He uses the same expression, decriminalizing poverty. But the things he's talking about, what they really are, to be more precise, they're not decriminalizing poverty because poverty is not a crime, but they are trying to bring about adjustment to various aspects of the criminal justice system that fall too harshly on low-income Americans. His example was jailing people convicted of minor offenses starts it down. This is his three arguments. This is Peter Edelman's, and he's on a mission. He actually wrote a book about it, Not a Crime to Be Poor, trying to get at how different aspects of the criminal justice system do unduly harshly impact poor people. It's a noble thought. So his 3 points about what really does happen, unfortunately, in the criminal justice system. One is jailing people convicted of minor offenses starts a downward spiral. And especially even when they give them probation, they miss one payment, they get a new violation and owe more money. In fact, that was a story another journalist wrote about having learned that someone with a relatively minor conviction for some kind of, I think it was shoplifting or something, but part of the terms of release were that the person released from shoplifting had to wear a bracelet or an anklet, the ankle thing so that they can keep track of where you are. And that municipality charged the person who'd committed the crime the amount it cost the county to have to pay the service that provides the ankle, the ankle tracker. And so the guy who had stolen whatever it was, $60 worth of stuff, owed about $1,000 to have to pay for this ankle thing. So obviously these are things, counties, cities, all levels of government, they do build in penalties sometimes. Frankly, they become penalties which become part of the way that municipality counts on getting income. They count on income from fees and penalties. And this guy, Peter Edelman, and other advocates for trying to help the poor get out of poverty say, you know what, let's not criminalize these kind of things. Let's not pile on the criminal by adding on these penalties that are not necessary really to make sure that he or she is adequately punished. Number two, Peter Edelman talks about setting high cash bail traps. He said they have a high cash bail set in some crimes where the person is not a danger to the community, and yet to meet the bail, they can't meet the bail. And so they will plead guilty just to get the heck out of jail and get back to work. And his point is, if we have these high amounts of bail set and it causes people to plead guilty, which then makes them less able to get jobs, it's kind of another spiral for the poor. Very good point. It seems reasonable. His third one was that sometimes municipalities too easily, or courts too easily, seize people's driver's licenses as part of the effort to bring them to justice, and that causes them to end up with further arrests or fines if they are, for example, have had to surrender their license, but they still have to drive to go to work, take the kids to school. Now, in those cases, I'm going to guess that the municipalities don't take the driver's license away from every single person arrested. They probably take them away from people arrested for dangerous driving offenses. All this to say, I urge you to pay attention to how frequently you will begin hearing this criminalizing poverty term. The American left has obviously thought this is a way to get at the American public, to have us be turn on each other, scornful of each other, scornful of our country, thinking that we've actually turned poverty into a crime. It's a very different thing to fix problems in the penalty systems, in the criminal justice system, in the way from municipalities all up to the federal government are able to issue fines. We had under President Trump that a major criminal justice reform, which is not the topic today, but there are a lot of good thinkers in this country, a lot of good Americans who love our country, want the country to be as fair as it can, working very hard to correct injustices in the criminal justice system. But looping back to the Dallas District Attorney, John Creuzot, trying to set a trend that they just plain old are going to let theft go is a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for encouraging crime, driving businesses out of low-income communities, and ultimately making American streets, stores, businesses, and life more unsafe. It will encourage crime, not the plan you want to have if you're trying to move America forward. And that, my friends, is my first five for today. Now I want to turn to just a completely different story. Everyone, I guess, in Washington is paying attention to the fact that this morning there was a press conference, 9:30 a.m. Eastern, press conference put on by the now Attorney General William Barr. And he was, he was trying to give a heads up to the public because today he released the Mueller report. He released the Mueller report to the public. I have downloaded it. It's almost 400 pages. I haven't gotten through it yet, but I will. Almost 400 pages, light redactions. But I want to just talk about why this was just so momentous to the American left and for all of America, really. President Trump's presidency since the day he won the election has had a dark cloud, a dark shadow over his presidency, over the legitimacy of the election, over whether he actually gets to claim that he is the duly elected president of the United States of America. This has been an effort by the American left, cooked up since before the time Trump won, to have the Justice Department system, Justice Department, the FBI, turn on Trump, make allegations of Trump-Russia collusion, and the left and millions of Americans who listen to the American left have been just chomping at the bit, waiting for the Mueller report to come out and to finally make clear to all of America how this entire system, that Trump's entire election was illegitimate. Turns out, as we all know, the Mueller report and the summary made first by Attorney General William Barr, made to Congress and then released to the public, basically said, after hours and hours of depositions, of hundreds of thousands of hours of depositions, of dozens and dozens of witnesses being interviewed, of documents being reviewed, of chasing down every rabbit hole about every person who ever was connected with the Donald Trump campaign, Mueller's conclusion was there was no collusion, which is not even a crime. Again, there was no conspiracy to collude with respect to the 2016 election between the Russians and Trump. Zip, zero, nada was the Mueller finding. The other charge that was considered by the Mueller team and also the subject of just hours and hours of investigation related to the argument of obstruction of justice. This is the arena or the topic where the American left still thinks somehow they can get Donald Trump. They can get him, or at the very least, they can diminish his role. They can delegitimize him as a president. They can dangle the threat of impeachment in front of him for the rest of the time he is serving as president of this country. And so the left has been eagerly looking forward to the Mueller report being released, trying to find something in there that will allow them to continue this charade, this farce of the Trump-Russia collusion, or something about the Trump-Russia collusion. So I want to make clear a couple of things that really need to be understood about this. Number one, the left has orchestrated and directed this entire effort. From the time the left decided, the left in the form of Comey, James Comey, deciding that he was never going to prosecute Hillary Clinton for clear, unequivocal violations of federal law with respect to the use of a private server in her home, endangering national security secrets, just black and white guilt there. He was going to make sure that just got swept under the rug and try to turn America's attention to this alleged collusion between Trump and Russia, which never happened. So this has been an ongoing frame-up, an ongoing fraud perpetrated on the American people, perpetrated in the American government, perpetrated in the Trump administration from the start. Mueller gets involved. He was almost 2 years ago, I think it was May of 2017, he was appointed. He has been on a mission, or as Trump calls it, a witch hunt, to find some basis, some argument that somehow someone connected with Trump did something wrong. He's concluded could not even close to come up with there was no conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia, but maybe hang their hat on this obstruction thing. Part of what tells you that the Democrats have just been living and breathing for this moment of having the Mueller report come out and coming up with some proof that, or some hint of possible scandal related to obstruction, is how the Democrats in Washington treated the news that Attorney General Barr was going to hold a press conference this morning, 9:30 in the morning, before he released the Mueller report. Now, he is the Attorney General of the United States. He's allowed to call a press conference about anything. He's allowed to call a press conference related to the single most important scandal in American history, the Trump-Russia collusion hoax. He's allowed to call a press conference. You would have thought he announced that he was going to, sell out the country, that he was going to do some just possibly nefarious thing in actually calling a press conference. I want to read to you what the one of the media people said. If I find it, yeah, here we go. This is Newsweek, the left wing, one of the left wing Democrat media mob in this country. Newsweek was talking about the idea how it was just unbelievable that, and they were reporting what Democrats in Washington were saying, unbelievable that Barr was calling a press conference before he released the report. What they're telling you is the Democrats had planned way the heck ahead of time an orchestrated release of their view of what the Mueller report said. The Democrats had planned to own the headlines. If there's one thing the Democrats understand, it is owning the headlines. They had decided to own these headlines to talk about from the moment the report was released, because the high-level Democrats in Washington almost surely already have seen this report. So you have the Democrats screeching and squalling and just squalor and screeching and hysteria. He can't do this. Why is he doing this? This is inappropriate. This is unseemly. No, it's not. Barr held a press conference and told people, basically, you know what? As I told you in my 4-page summary you've all read, there was no basis for a charge of, or even belief in, conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Russians with respect to the 2016 elections. But Barr went on to say and talk about what's on everyone's mind, of course, which is, what about the argument about obstruction? Did Trump somehow obstruct justice? Well, there was actually a funny little column. In fact, I'm going to summarize the way it was said by someone. This is author was Streif. I think this is on, I'm not sure which website it was on. But anyway, Streif made this characterization of how the Democrats reacted to the idea that the Attorney General would even consider holding a press conference. From the tenor of this screeching, you'd be correct in thinking that Barr's press release has screwed with a plan coordinated between House Democrats and their many fluffers in the press to launch a blitz of pre-written takes on the report to set the narrative. Barr's press conference ensures his interpretation gets discussed for about an hour before the Democrats get the report. The Democrats do not want the American people to actually know what's in the Mueller report. Virtually, 1% of America will read a 400-page report, but the Democrats wanted to own the media and tell you what you're supposed to believe about the report. Barr really sucked the wind out of their sails on that. But to be very clear, what Barr had to say this morning that matters about this report, the special counsel's office did not find, and these are Barr's words, any evidence that members of the Trump campaign or anyone associated with the campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its hacking operations. In other words, there was no evidence of Trump's campaign collusion with the Russian government's backing. So this is Barr kind of really putting it to him. But I'll tell you something else. I want to briefly run through just a few of the, and so by the way, so President Trump had a little fun with it this morning, of course. He put out a tweet essentially saying, here's proof the media failed on the spying narrative. And my wonderful Matt Stoker, who I believe is there on the scene, can put up this tweet. This is President Trump's tweet this morning. Nolte, poll shows media failed to gaslight public about Trump campaign spying. So that was Trump, never to be one to just hold back and not say anything. Trump put a tweet up basically saying, this has been gaslighting. The expression gaslighting is just misleading people. The Democrat media mob, the left, the people in this country determined that President Trump should not be allowed to be our president, have been telling Americans for years that for over 2 years, there's Trump-Russia collusion, and all of that effort, headline after headline, leak after leak, conspiracy theory, threats of impeachment, the American public, by a plurality, understand that it was a hoax. By a plurality, understand there was 4 in 10 voters said they did believe. And the worst news for the Democrats is that 4 in 10 voters say they do believe spying occurred, which is really not what the Dems want to hear, which is exactly what Attorney General William Barr told Congress last week, and which brought the wrath of Congress on him because he dared to say, yes, actually, people in the FBI were spying on the Trump campaign. And that made a bunch of Democrats say, hey, wait, you can't say that. You didn't really mean spying. He said, yes, I do. I mean spying. So among that, 57% of Republicans believe the Obama administration spied on Trump. Even a quarter of the Democrats have figured this out. So this was not a good day for the Democrats, even though I know they're going to try really hard to take the little pieces in the Mueller report that can make them, give them some fodder, some ammo to continue arguing that there was really Trump-Russia collusion, or at least there was obstruction. But I want to quick go through the obstruction arguments, not all of them, but the key ones that you will hear people talk about over and over and over and over and over and over and over, and you should be ready for them. Number one, this is not one of the 10 things that Mueller had as possible suspicions of Trump, but number one, you'll hear from the Democrats, I'm sure, is that the special counsel team wrote in their report that President Trump, stated more in his, he had finally gave in and allowed them to ask him questions, more than 30 times stated, does not recall, does not remember, or does not have an independent recollection of information the investigators asked about. Well, I got to tell you, folks, if President Trump had a first-year lawyer anywhere in this country advising him, let alone the high caliber lawyers he has in the White House, they all would tell him the same thing. The Mueller team was looking to create a perjury trap for him. The Mueller team was looking for something they could say, well, we asked you X and you said Y, but we have proof that Y wasn't exactly correct. The perjury trap Mueller used in this investigation over and over and over and over was well known to the Trump attorneys. Therefore, he was ready in questioning by the Mueller team to not speculate, to not say, well, I'm pretty sure I remember. I'm not sure, but I think this is what happened. This is how you get in trouble with a badly motivated, unfairly motivated prosecutor trying to be forthcoming, trying to say the best, well, I'm pretty sure, I think I remember. No, you can't say that when you're dealing at this level, in this league, when you know how Mueller's team has conducted the interrogations of other people, including Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, including others who have been reported that the Mueller team attempted to trap them in innocent mistakes that they made in recounting a conversation or trying to remember exactly who said what or what order it was said or who was there. And they understand that they're ready to pounce to claim you lied to the FBI. Trump had to do that. That's the only answer any lawyer would give Trump is if you're not 100% sure, the answer is to the best of my recollection, or I'm pretty sure, or I don't remember. And you know something, a lot of us, if you're asked about a meeting 3 years ago that at the time didn't even seem that important, and you're asked the details of, well, who said what and what order, and of course, you're not going to really recall with absolute clarity. So another thing you will was very interesting was the Attorney General William Barr said in his press conference this morning was that he and Rosenstein. Now Rosenstein is, he's a little bit worried about himself and his future, but Rosenstein is with Barr in this press conference, and Attorney General Barr said that he disagreed with some of the special counsel, that's Robert Mueller, some of special counsel Mueller's legal theories, felt that some of the episodes of alleged potential obstruction that Mueller recounted did not amount to obstruction as a matter of law. I mean, some of these may have been close. He's saying, I don't know if you really count that obstruction. But to run through the top items that the left is thinking and hoping can possibly constitute obstruction, I'm just going to tell you just a few of them. One inane argument made by Mueller and people on the left was that President Trump's decision to fire James Comey could be considered obstruction of justice. Folks, the left is so determined to say President Trump isn't allowed to be president because we don't like him, that they would concoct an inane legal theory that President Trump, the president of the United States, the one whose job it is to appoint people in his cabinet, including the head of the FBI, the head of all these federal agencies, that President Trump didn't have the right to fire the person, his own appointee, whom he's allowed to fire because he doesn't like the color of Comey's socks. He's allowed to fire anyone on his team, as is any president, for any reason that he has. He doesn't have to have a reason the left likes. If he can do that, he can't be guilty of obstruction for choosing to fire Comey. And this, my friends, was one of the reasons that some of the Democrats in the U.S. Senate were opposed to William Barr as Attorney General, because about a year or more than a year before Barr was appointed Attorney General, he had written, and he is a former Attorney General, to be clear, so he knows the job. He'd written a letter essentially saying to Mueller, this is absurd that you are considering a charge of obstruction by the president for his decision to fire someone in his own cabinet. So this is Barr. He already weighed in to say that can't be obstruction. And that was one reason Democrats in the Senate were down on him, saying, you really can't, you kind of prejudge this. I mean, maybe it was obstruction. He's saying, no, as a matter of law, it cannot be. Regardless of the facts, regardless of the reasons, regardless of what you think Trump did or didn't do, it can't be obstruction. It can't be obstruction to fire someone you're allowed to hire or fire. So, but there was a lot of discussion in this, top 10 items that maybe could be obstruction. One of them related to Michael Flynn. One of them related to his termination as Comey. You already mentioned that. Discussion about whether the Trump apparently told members of his advisors that the special counsel appointments may have been the end of his presidency. And Trump asserted that Mueller had conflicts of interest. So Trump is basically starting to realize Mueller was a really bad choice to be special counsel because he has conflicts. And so Trump is talking with his own advisors, his own team, contemplating about whether or not whether Mueller was a good choice or not, whether Mueller should stay on. So what they're saying is Trump can't even think about, he can't even talk about, he can't even think about whether Mueller should have been appointed special counsel and whether he should be fired. You're not this is like a thought crime but this is how deep Mueller's team went into the effort to find some way to get rid of President Trump, which ultimately was the entire goal. My last thing I'll say, and I said this about when we talked about this a couple of days ago on this show, I'm glad the Mueller report is out. I hope it continues to be, reviewed. I'm glad people are reading it, and I don't know what will happen with the, with the public's reaction to it. But the Democrat Party is going to play this issue all the way until we get around to the next election. The Democrat Party is going to play this issue, going to dig up nuggets that got tucked into the Mueller report, argue that the Mueller report really indicated the president should have been charged with obstruction, but somehow they didn't have the nerve to. There will be efforts to pull out nuggets from the Mueller report for the rest of time. And I don't know how that is going to play out in the public's eye, but my guess is there's going to be just endless screeching and screaming out of the left from now until the 2020 presidential elections. And just keep in mind, simply no basis to argue either conspiracy or obstruction. And no matter what the left wants to say about it, there's still no basis for any of that. So that is enough on that for today. And now our last topic I want to turn to is this, it really is the Easter season and where we are in this country and in this world as we approach Easter season. First of all, as most of you likely know, we have Passover, the Jewish festival celebrating God's protection of the Jewish people during the time of their exodus from slavery from Egypt. And there's Passover is a beautiful season in the Jewish faith and starts this Saturday, goes for a week. And actually, I know Christian pastors who observe Passover, who just, it is part of the Bible. The whole story of the Old Testament, New Testament pulled together is the Bible. Many Christian pastors actually support and are, observe Passover. So I love that. Okay, and then Easter is this coming Sunday. Easter, this coming Sunday, the celebration in my Christian faith, our Christian faith, of the resurrection of Jesus after his crucifixion and 3 days in the tomb and resurrection to eternal life. The reason I wanted to mention those is not just because they are incredibly lovely and important seasons, important holy celebrations in the Jewish and the Christian faith, but I want to tie them into what is happening in this world today, first in France and the fire at Notre Dame, and also more broadly, what's happening in Western Europe and what's happening in America with respect to our love and honoring of our Christian faith. So to start with, we have in Notre Dame, we talked, of course, yesterday, this massive fire at Notre Dame in France. It probably is the single most recognized symbol of Christianity in the world. Maybe the Vatican is a higher recognition, but the Notre Dame Cathedral, just a beautiful, beautiful thing to go see. Everyone who ever visits France goes to see it. And a big fire, no cause yet announced, no cause yet acknowledged. But there is an effort to try to speak about the burning of Notre Dame Cathedral as symbolic of, or part of the larger picture of the crushing of and the loss of the importance of, in Western European society, the place of their Christianity and the place of Christian history in Western civilization. There's a beautiful piece written by Dennis Prager. It ran in numerous, in fact, I think it's up on our website, americacanwetalk.org. You can go to that website, and on the homepage under blog or under show, you go down, list of links, it's right there. But his piece is called Notre Dame, an Omen, or he wrote another time, he put the same article out with different titles, an Omen, Notre Dame is an omen. But the basic thing he's saying is, it is in this Easter week, in this most important religious season in all of Christianity every year, Easter week, we had the burning of the single most important symbol of Christianity, at least in Western Europe and probably in the world. Now, it didn't burn to the ground, tremendous protection for many of the beautiful pieces of art and history that are there, but still tremendous and very dangerous fire. And I raise this to say to you that people are seeing that as symbolic of the decline of Christianity in Western Europe and really more broadly in the world. And I think that's a really, really great time. This is a great time for us to think about what's happening in Europe and then what's happening in America. Because part of what's happened in Europe is, in fact, what Dennis Prager goes through is just talks about how historically Western Europe, Western civilization recognized the place of Christianity in creating our ideas, our values, and our very identity as children of God, our very identity as a people. And it was not about race, and it wasn't about ethnicity, and it wasn't about skin color, and it wasn't about national origin. It was the place of the timeless truths of the scriptures that people for many, many centuries knew. They just knew it. They knew that our identity as a country and our identity as a people was rooted in that Christianity, was rooted in that. And so but what's happened over decades, Dennis Prager points to the Enlightenment era, where many in Europe tried to replace, scriptural truth and biblical truth about the nature of man, the nature of God, and all that, with kind of secular enlightenment, that men thought they were kind of too smart for God, too smart to need scriptural teachings, that they could just use reason. He then talks about the impact on Christian culture in Western Europe of the First and Second World Wars, and how both of those wars really, really hammered away at the goodness of the Christian culture and their belief in each other and the belief in the Christian faith, and really the belief that the Christian faith formed the core of their identity. And because Christianity is in decline, still is, and has been for decades in Western Europe, when they have had, especially in recent years, the massive influx of Islamic immigration into Western Europe and the UK, and the Islamic faith is not suffering from a similar decline as is the Christian faith in Western Europe. He talked about, and others have talked about, kind of Europe wasn't rooted enough in its Christian identity, not rooted enough in its understanding of itself as a product and outcome of Judeo-Christian ideas, that it was not able to recognize, first of all, what was happening as Islamic culture pushed its way into Western Europe and began demanding concessions to Islamic values, Islamic teachings, and Western Europe was secularized enough, unaware of its Christian roots, unaware that the Christian roots were and are the source of so much goodness in society, the source of our sense of our value and our purpose and our identity, that they weren't equipped to recognize what the Islamization of Europe was. And then they weren't prepared or able to fight back. They didn't know to fight back. So therefore, what we have now in Western Europe is a crumbling Christianity, a Christianity largely succumbing to Islamization and militant secularization. Yesterday we were talking about the burning of Notre Dame, and how the Notre Dame people looking into the cause of the fire were saying, well, it's either the militant secularists or the Islamic immigrants. The point is, Western Europe has abandoned Christianity, even though Christian churches exist there, and the Vatican is there, and Catholic churches exist all over the continent. The proportion of people who understand the importance of Christianity in Western Europe has diminished greatly. Now moving over to the United States of America. Our precious country was founded on these extraordinarily and profoundly important ideas that are found in the beginning of our Declaration of Independence, that God created all men equal, that we all have inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness simply because we were born. The government exists as an entity not to tell us what our rights are, but to protect those rights, to help us live out those rights, to give flesh and meaning and depth and purpose and protection to those rights. And that idea in the Declaration of Independence is rooted in the Judeo-Christian scriptures. It's rooted in the ideas in the Bible that say that God created man in his image and likeness, that God created men and women, that God's law set forth in the Old and New Testaments are the source of our morals, our principles, our beliefs, and our very identity itself. It was a Christian nation at its founding. America was and I want to really be clear, a Judeo-Christian nation, because our Jewish friends and neighbors in this country embrace the same ideas about the rights of man from God as the Christian churches have done, and actually need to begin doing more. Because where we are in America is, most unfortunately, we have many Christian churches abandoning scriptural teaching, abandoning the ideas of the Bible for the latest trendy secular left-wing idea that is just has no rooting in, no basis in the scriptures. This, where we are this Easter season, having watched what happened to Notre Dame and in France and its symbolic destruction or symbolism of the destruction of Christianity in Western Europe, we can look at that and decide in America, are we going to wake up and realize that we are not helped? We are in fact greatly harmed by many of the ideas pushed by the American left that toss Christianity aside, toss God out of the public square, God out of the public conversation, Christian values in this country denigrated by the radical left in this country. We are in a battle in this country for the heart and soul of this country. Do we still believe it's the country the founders intended to create, rooted in the idea of the freedom of the individual and the responsibility of the individual and the shaping of the individual's very identity by God and protected by God? Or are we going to surrender to an ever-increasing socialist, tyrannical, totalitarian style government the American left is pushing? That is our quest. That is our responsibility to understand, and it is our responsibility to work as hard as we can to renew the American Christian culture, renew the American Jewish culture. Don't have religion be the church where you go on Saturday or Sunday or whatever day you go, but not what you live in your daily life, not what you expect to see America to protect and carry forth. That is the quest in this Easter season. And finally, I want to turn to why all this matters to you. I do this show every week to talk to you about the goodness, the greatness, the extraordinary importance of this precious country. And I try to talk about the ideas that matter, but I want to talk with you about why these ideas matter to you. And if we have Matt in the screen, Matt, I've totally lost the screen, so I'm going to hope you have it up on the screen. I can't even see it. So I'm going to, So where we are on this, why it matters to you. Okay. Number one, I can't even see the screen anymore on this setup at home, so I'm hoping you have it up. This idea of decriminalizing poverty, like the DA in Dallas wants, and other people will want, why it matters. Thou shalt steal is not a suggestion. It's foundational to civilized society. Decriminalizing theft, or this whole idea of poverty, was never a crime to start with. Poverty has never been a crime in this country. It's a very different thing to have noble efforts to reduce unduly harsh penalties, but to excuse theft because of poverty implies that in America, where some can never survive without stealing, it's an attack on America itself. There are better answers. Support school choice, support intact families, go after things, fix things that are the barriers to people functioning in our society. Go after the drivers of poverty instead of decriminalizing theft. Otherwise, we'll have a lawless society. The left will never be happy. It'll be 750 this year. It'll be 1,000 next year. Pretty soon, we lose the rule of law. Number two, as to why the Mueller report matters to you. Remember, a fraudulent exoneration of Hillary Clinton was followed by a fraudulent investigation of President Trump. That's where we are today. The Obama Department of Justice and the FBI was rotten at the top. It has to be cleaned out. This whole obstruction was the injustice of a coup attempt, is exactly the whole way that is supposedly Trump's obstruction is simply how any honest president would respond, how an innocent president would have responded. Accountability of the coup plotters is still on Barr's plate. He has to hold these people accountable. Failure to hold them accountable is injustice. And the very last, on Easter week, and we're almost out of time today, I know, but on this Easter and Passover week, why it matters to you, think of all the things in American history that can helpfully remind you that we are not a country rooted in militant secularism. We are not a country rooted in atheism. We're a country rooted in these precious ideas, filling the scriptures, and that built America. Washington on his knees at Valley Forge symbolizes that. Thomas Jefferson, all that he wrote in the Declaration we just talked about. President Lincoln talking about a house divided cannot stand, that comes from the Bible. We had Reagan, we're a shining city on a hill. At times of our greatness, at times you look back at America's greatness, are times we recognized that our country is rooted in the spiritual truths of the Bible. It was built on biblical teachings. Passover and Easter celebrate this truth and the value of those teachings. They haven't changed. All the left is pushing, socialism, Islamism, the radical LGBTQI agenda, they're ultimately all about destroying the American ideas of individual freedom and responsibility and God-given identity. Don't surrender. And very last, the Notre Dame Cathedral fire is symbolic of Christianity in America, damaged but not destroyed, ready to be rebuilt. Have a wonderful Passover. Have a happy Easter. I will talk to you Monday, 3 p.m. Central Time, and every Monday through Thursday, 3 p.m. Central, here on America Can We Talk. And remember to speak up for America, because America matters. Talk to you Monday.
Voice upon voice, like a crashing wave. Can you hear us now?
America Can We Talk? Truth about America.